gentlemen, welcome to Legion Talk, episode number 122. Now, what we're going to be taking a look at is, unfortunately, birth rates, reproduction rates are on the fall. That's right. How having babies fell out of fashion. From The Spectator, I have never heard of that, but cool, no problem. With all of our institutions now firmly under the iron fist of progressivism, I've never heard of The Spectator, so I don't know that if they have a political leaning or not. After progressivism, you're kind of wondering. So I mean, look, I try to find articles that are middle of the road, maybe right, far, left, and try to interpret all that stuff. So anyway. It was only a matter of time before social justice mission creep slipped under the doormat and into the home. Oh, they might. I wouldn't say they're necessarily right. I'd definitely give them moderate, so to speak, because they're not using. For now, we'll see. You can only promulgate the idea that we live under a tyrannical patriarchy for so long. This is like a normal moderate take, but in today's world it'd be considered far right. Like, oh, they're alt right. Like, okay. Oh, sure. Even though they're like what 51% of the world is like women, and like 49% are men, and more women graduate from college than men do, and more women have degrees than men. I mean, anyway, more men commit suicide than women do. For so long before young people take notice and begin to lose trust in the whole idea of intimate relationships with the opposite sex. Fourth wave feminism has shifted to its focus. I'm sorry. From the workplace to male-female relationships, and a growing underclass of men is turning its back on women by joining poisonous underground groups such as incels and men going their own way. Yeah, this has definitely got to be like middle of the road. Oh, I froze for a second, but I'm back. Yeah, the encoder's not overloaded. Hush. OBS is the only thing that says the encoder is overloaded sometimes. It's really funny because I did my interview with Chrissy Mayer, and it went phenomenally. So, I don't know. Without freezing once, 56 minutes. Why would any young person choose to settle down and have kids against such a toxic backdrop? Well, increasingly they aren't. In Barry Weiss' recent article entitled First Comes Love, Then Comes a Sterilization, the writer reveals that, Barry Weiss was fired from, I believe, the New York Times, and now she's an independent writer, because even though she's like she's a liberal, and she's like, but she's too moderate for them. She's not too far, she's not far left enough, so they booted her. Are making fewer babies than we've made since we started keeping track in the 1930s, and some women are not just putting off pregnancy, but eliminating the possibility of it altogether. Last year, the number of deaths exceeded the births in 25 U.S. states, up from 5 the year before. The marriage rate is also at an all-time low at 6.5 marriages per 1,000 people. Millennials are the first generation where a majority are unmarried, about 56%. Unfortunately, I fall in that category. It's not because I don't want to get married. I want to get married. I want to get married, have kids, have a family. But quite frankly, the dating market is horrendous. It's a slew of, which is not a big deal, of single mothers who have gotten out of horrendous marriages. And, you try to help them, you try to be there for them, but their ex-husbands / the father of their children creates drastic issues on all fronts. So no, it's not the best market to date. The number of young men ages 18 to 30, well, I'm 36, so I'm out of that demographic, who admit they have had no sex in the past year tripled between 2008 and 2018. Holy cow, that's nuts. I mean, me, at the age of 36, it's like, Okay, fine, but 18 to 30? That's some prime baby making years. Cities like New York, where young secular Americans flock to build their lives, are increasingly childless. In San Francisco, where there's shit on the streets, yes, I added that because it's true. Thank you, Nancy Pelosi, you scumbag. There are more dogs than children. And homeless people, probably. I don't know. Or piles of shit from the homeless. I don't know. I mean, pick your feature. Some of this will be down to lifestyle choices, of course, but there appears to be something more disturbing going on. As Weiss points out, the message from this young cohort is clear. Life is already exhausting enough, and the world is broken and burning. Okay? Who would want to bring new innocent life into a criminally unequal society situated on a planet with catastrophically rising sea levels? Yeah, this is definitely swinging. This is definitely swinging moderate to rightish, maybe moderate right. It's still not like, it's not talking about BLM or crap like that. It's talking about legitimate issues from both sides. I would go further and argue that young men and women are losing a sense of their shared humanity. A malign force that sees conflict as the only way to resolve encoding overload. No, it's not, dude. Perceived inadequacies has captured their minds. After all, the sexual abuse campaigns and the anti-male rhetoric of the past few years is why any wonder the young feel less disposed towards each other. In a recent survey of 5,000 single U.S. citizens by the dating service Match, 80% said sex was less important to them now than it was before the pandemic. In the UK, the 2020 to 21 NatSol COVID study, which replaced the National Survey of Sexual Attitudes and Lifestyles, paints an equally depressing picture. Sex is seen as a minefield where one wrong move can lead to assault or a lengthy court battle over issues of consent. Why take the risk? Yep, that's a good point. Skipping down, social justice activism has sown so much discord between the sexes that many women view the act of having children through an entirely political lens. As I discovered at a recent press dinner, as the only man at the table of around 20 female journalists aged between 25 and 35, much of the initial chat didn't concern me, so he sat there and probably played on his phone while listening in. But when the conversation eventually turned to marriage and children, I felt I should speak up. Rashly, perhaps considering how outnumbered I was. Well, good for you, dude. What surprised me was the almost unanimous contempt for both the institution of marriage and of family life more broadly. When I when I argued that the evidence seems to suggest that this is perfectly natural for women to want to marry and have kids, the level of indignation seemed disproportionate. It's all the patriarchy's fault. There's more women on the planet. Men have conditioned women to want kids, seem to be the general consensus, or biology. It's called biology. It's called biology, and we all suffer from it because we're human beings and we're biological creatures. We're mammals. It's called biology. Or as one 35-year-old put it, to be the general consensus, or as one 35-year-old put it, what women really want is to be effed, is to fudge and have a good time without the pressure of to breed. Maybe you, weirdo. Hey, sweetness. At the age of 35, seeing as that I'm only a year older than you, your biological clock is ticking real bad. I can still have kids at the age of 70, 80, 90, however long I live, however long, I can still have the ability for my heart to pump and get it up. You don't. Yours is kind of like a lush oasis that slowly degrades over time and becomes a barren wasteland. Which, hey, if you're cool with, no problem. I pointed out that men often struggle with the burden of their own biological instincts, which they immediately dismissed as unacceptable, socially constructive behavior driven once again by the all-pervasive patriarchy. Why is everything the patriarchy? Where's the sense of responsibility from people? Oh, there's none. This is what happens when you give participation trophies to people. You could argue that a group of ambitious young journalists is hardly representative of most young women, but having subsequently spoken to a cross section of 30 something females, there appears to be a broad agreement with the idea that men and women's sexual proclivities are more of a product of social construction than biological instinct. That's stupid. There may be a certain amount of truth in this, but the danger now, as I see it, is that we are socially constructing the young away from intimate relationships altogether, thereby condemning them to a life of loneliness and resentment, the consequences of which really will be catastrophic for the future of this planet, especially this company. Thank you, James Ennis Smith. Thank you for that. A man with a real take. And ladies, guess what? Biology's the thing. You may not want kids now, let's say hypothetically at the age of 23, but when you hit 33 and you probably haven't had children, there's a good chance you're probably going to want children. And when you hit 35, like Baronosaurus Rex there, who her vagina is walking through the barren wasteland of the Gobi Desert practically, you're going to feel resentment, and that's why she lashed out the way she did. They project. That's what they do. It's like, what women really want is to and then have a good time without the pressure to breed. It's like, no, you're at the end of your breeding years, so you have to make excuses for how you've screwed up. And the closer to 40 you get, the more panic you're going to feel. And if you don't get that in, then guess what? Life's going to be real hard there, sweetness. Life's going to be real hard as a blue-haired weirdo who is not married, has no loving relationship with a man, or has children, and is going to die miserable and alone. I digress. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Put your own crap aside. Connect with people. And if a guy says, hey, you look really pretty today, look, there are creeps out there, I get it. But you know what? If he's not being creepy, don't act like he's creepy. Talk to people. Pretend it's 1995 and the internet doesn't exist. See ya.